All right, everybody, welcome to Rainy Nights, this segment of my Rainy Rider YouTube channel, where I interview other moto vloggers and motorcycle personalities. Tonight, I have the Mad Yankee. So, introduce
Hello.
yourself.
Hello. I am the Mad Yankee. My actual name is Alex. I'm not gonna try to hide that. But I've been hanging out with this crew and this guy right here for since about when? Since probably about was it October, March of last year we
March
finally met.
last year, yeah. So,
March. Yep.
yeah, a lot
Yep.
of
It was
fun.
in March FA. Yes. Looking forward to the next one.
So, tell us where you're from and what do you ride?
All right. So where I'm from originally is a town called Newton, Massachusetts, which is basically a suburb of Boston. I grew up there, went to school there, lived there most of my life, but I would spend as my kid probably at least a third to half my life in another town called Gilmanton, New Hampshire, which is a little bit farther north. It's actually right next to Laconia, where they have Bike Week every year. So that was a pretty major fixture, and so I kind of would be in both places a lot. So it may be weird, but I sort of think of myself as being from both of those areas. But primarily, I am in fact a asshole.
Right on. So,
Yep.
your main ride now is a what?
Is a 2020 Indian Scout. It is green and black as the Emerald Flake. Funny thing about Indian Scouts is that although that was not my starter bike, that was the motorcycle that helped get me into riding. When I was first getting interested in riding, I was looking at a bunch of bikes, but I was like, I don't know, it's the kind I like that are all so big and it's sort of intimidating. We ended up going to an Indian dealership and just seeing one, and I just remember sitting on it going, wow, I could actually really ride this thing. Of course, I'm not going to start off riding on a brand new motorcycle, so spent a little bit shopping around, and I went out and got a Honda Shadow 750 Aero, which I rode for a few years, which I did love that bike. But the Scout is the bike I was actually really working towards, and that is my current ride. I got that. Oh, I think it was 2021. Was it April? The spring of 2021 when I finally managed to pick that up.
Right on. So we got some people out in the audience there. Juice is in the audience. Obviously, Pillion's out there. Aaron, nothing at random's there. Seven showed up today. Hey, Seven.
Hey.
Anthony, Sky's Limit showed up. And Seven Sentinel says, apparently to you, love your brother, because obviously she's not talking to me because I'm not from the great Northeast, so it must be you.
Yeah.
Billy showed
Yep.
up. Blake's here. Blake says that me and you
Blake.
are two of his favorite people. So, Blake,
Oh, thank
back
you.
at you, buddy.
Thank you, Blake.
So,
Blake, you are in fact one of my favorite people. I'm always checking out what you're doing. I'm always keeping up on you. Miss you, bro.
Billy's everybody's favorite person. I mean, he just like is like a ray of sunshine wherever he goes.
Oh, he is great.
He wants to be a ray of darkness, but we all know better. So,
Yeah, sometimes you can't pick. Trust me, I tried.
and then Randy from one of my old Navy buddies just showed up. Randall Munson.
Oh,
So
cool.
everybody say hi to my Navy buddy. Here to support me. So as we roll through this, so I'm going to ask you a lot of questions, and you can defer if you want to, and if you can talk as much as you want.
What are you, a
So,
doctor?
so you guys out there, yeah, if you're not familiar with this, I ask questions. If you like it, then like, subscribe, comment, hit the bell, tell all your friends about it, and bring us over to the Rainy Rider channel where you can watch Rainy Nights every Saturday and Sunday at 6 p.m. And then every once in a while, I just throw a surprise one in there. So you never know who we're going to get. We got a good lineup going, and I got other people amazingly asking me to be on the channel, and they want to do interviews now. So I just did a girl from Tasmania last night. And I have a famous Canadian lined up, and I'm trying to get her somewhere in this slot. I'm not going to drop a name yet, but everybody will see that as soon as she totally confirms. I'm going to lock that in. So, I already know the question or answer to this one, but are you a fair weather rider or a rough rider?
Well, I was gonna say you definitely know the answer to
I
that
know this
question.
answer.
That's from our experience. I mean, don't get me wrong. I prefer to ride in fair weather if I can, but I do try to ride as much as I can. It really does depend on the context, though. If it's just like a weekend and I'm thinking, well, I might go out for a ride. If the weather's cruddy, then I'll just find something else to do that particular day. But as you saw, if I have a trip planned and it's like, okay, we're going here, then yeah, rain, shine, whatever, we're gonna make it happen. And I always try to stay prepared. So yeah, it does depend on the context. It does depend if it's you say it's like bike week and we're all going somewhere and the weather just happens to be cruddy. Well, we're gonna put on the rain gear and just try and make it happen. But I am very appreciative when the sun finally comes out and it warms up.
But if
So
you get stuck in Arkansas
yeah,
and
well
it's 50
there wasn't
degrees.
no there wasn't no listen 50 would have been fine. That wasn't the problem. There was
Oh yeah, you
30
had
some odd
worse.
degrees coming back.
Yeah, you had
Yeah,
worse
so
going on.
if you we'll probably talk about this a little bit more later. But if you guys don't know what Rainey is referring to, is the infamous Eureka Springs trip we took to Arkansas last spring, and I decided in my infinite wisdom to do the entire thing. It was like a day and a half riding there, and then hung around for a few days, and it was a day and a half riding back. And especially on the day I left, it was raining and very cold. And then I rode all the way from Eureka Springs, Arkansas to, I think it was just outside Columbus, Ohio that day. And then the next day, when I rode back to my parents' house here near Boston, I basically had to outrun a late spring snowstorm the entire way. And yeah, when it was going across the Alleghenies in Pennsylvania, it dropped to I think about 35 degrees. That was a challenge.
Yeah, one thing I'm finding out about everybody, I guess I just have a unique group of friends. And I would say probably 90% of the people I know that ride motorcycles are very fair weather riders. If it starts raining, they're going to shut down. They're going to not ride. They're going to do, but not our group. Our group, I think it's just because we're kind of forced to going to Tampa, going to Eureka Springs, and doing these
Yeah.
Nashville trips and stuff. It's like if you're going to go, you better be dedicated to it. There's no laying back.
Yeah.
There's no sitting it out. You
Well,
can't phone it in.
I, I love my brothers from the south, but you guys like to make it very tough on us sometimes because you want to do everything in either like April or May or like October, which when you're down there makes perfect sense. But when you're up here, that is still winter sometimes. So
Yeah.
it can be a but that is the thing too. It's like if it's literally just me on my own and it's raining out, then no, I'm probably not going to take the bike out. I'm not really going to torment myself. But if the group's up or if I'm meeting somebody I haven't seen in a while, or like again we're doing a big trip, then yeah, we'll just do it and make it happen. It also depends on how much planning went into it. There does come a point where it's like, all right, it's the point of no return. So unless there's an actual tornado, we're gonna go for it.
So Justin has a question for you for later, but we'll get through some of the motorcycle questions first. So Justin, remind me at the end when we start getting some questions. So you kind of touched on this. How did you get into motorcycles?
Well, this is actually a super complicated question, and this we got to start this one way back. But when I was a little kid, I'm talking 5 or 6, my parents actually did ride at that time, and they were very much into the whole Laconia Bike Week scene during that period. And this was like the early and the mid to the late '90s when it was infamous for being a bit wilder than it is these days. But I was just around motorcycles a lot. A lot of their friends rode. I always had neighbors who rode, so I was just exposed to motorcycles from a very early age. Started getting, and I did actually ride with my parents sometimes. I remember my dad would come to pick me up from school and take me to baseball practice on the back of his Suzuki Intruder 1400. Actually, I still got a few pictures of that lying around here somewhere. My dad had that bike. My mom had a Yamaha. I think it was a 700 Maxim. Which, if you don't know anything about those bikes, they looked almost like these little metric cruiser like Sportster clones, but they had an inline four Yamaha sport bike engine in them. So it was always very funny to watch her like pull up to next to some like guys on Harleys who just didn't know what they were looking at, and they go, "Oh, look at the little lady on her Japanese Sportster clone," and then she would open the throttle on that and just smoke the hell out of them. It was really funny. But I was exposed to that a lot. And so I started trying to get into motorcycles from a young age. My parents and one of my uncles, they got together when I was about 9, and they actually bought me a dirt bike. It was what was the model? It was a Honda XR70. So a little 70cc dirt bike. And this was actually I didn't know this at the time, but it had no clutch, and it was like a semi-automatic transmission, kind of like they had now. Well, I thought that was like normal for whatever reason. I didn't realize how odd that was. But I rode, we had that up in New Hampshire, and I rode that around as much as I could. But the thing about New Hampshire is that, it looks like it would be a good place to have a dual sport or a dirt bike, but you'd be surprised actually how limited a lot of the dirt riding is up there, because a lot of those trails don't allow dirt bikes, or they're on private land, and they don't want motorized vehicles there, or it's owned by snowmobile and ATV associations, and they don't want dirt bikes on it. So I didn't really have a lot of places to ride it. I rode it up and down the dirt road that was outside of the house in Gilmanton there as much as I could until somebody who moved in on the corner was actually a police officer who lived there stopped me and told me that because I didn't have a license and that was technically a class, I think it's like class 5 public road. I wasn't supposed to be doing that. I'm 10. I'm like, it's a dirt bike. It's a dirt road. That's how it works, right? Well, apparently not. So, but around this time too, Bike Week, it started getting kind of stressful on my parents, just trying to, because they would have like huge crew come up to our place in Gilmanton every year. There had to be dozens and dozens, if not like 100 people who would show up at various times and just party there. But it got to be a lot on them, and so they kind of fell out of riding. And then because I couldn't get a lot of use out of as much use as I wanted out of the dirt bike, I started to fall out of riding too, and it kind of wasn't a thing for me for a long time. So probably about the time when basically too, I outgrew the dirt bike and I didn't really because it's 70cc. It's not really big enough for an adult. I mean, the motor's fine, but the frame, if you've ever seen one of those bikes, they are really small. And so I didn't really have money for another one. So I just sort of fell out of riding when I was a teenager and didn't really think about doing it. So I got into other things, mostly as, hunting and fishing. And fast forward, this would be about 2017 or so. And I'm up in New Hampshire during Bike Week, but I'm not there for Bike Week because it also happens to be one of the best times in New Hampshire to go fishing for smallmouth bass, which is a thing I do constantly. So I'm up there, and up there as well is my cousin and her boyfriend at the time. And her boyfriend at the time was and still is a Watertown police officer, and he rides as well. And they were up there on his Harley. And so I just hung out with them a little bit, and he was showing me the Harley. And then I was watching him, going to all these cool places. He's like, yeah, tomorrow we're going to do Ride to the Sky, which is the big ride they used to do up to the top of Mount Washington every Bike Week. And I was like, wow, that's actually really cool. And so it started planting the idea back in my head. And that same weekend, I went over to the lake to go fishing, spend a morning catching smallmouth. And then when I left the lake, I decided to take a different road that I normally wouldn't, because I'm like, well, if I go left down this road, it'll actually take me on a path over the mountains. That's kind of cool. So I was going over the mountains near Alton, New Hampshire, and I ended up behind a pack of bikers that were going there as they were going over this beautiful scene with this big open field and mountains on each side. And I just kind of had this aha moment, what am I doing sitting in this truck when I could be looking all this, but also out in it at the same time? So the combination of those two things, for whatever reason, it just planted the bug back in my head, and I couldn't let go of it. I could not get the thought of it out of my head. So literally the next week, I started looking at motorcycles at dealerships. I signed up to take MSF probably about 2 weeks later. Took MSF, went and got my license, went and got the Shadow 750, and literally just started riding every chance I got, and discovered, oh my God, this is awesome. Why was I not doing this earlier? Going to all these cool places, and then just meeting all sorts of cool people that I never would have met before. It just opened up an entire new world to me, and I've been hooked on it ever since. So.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
So yeah, this community we have is gigantic if you think about it. I was just, when you said that you stopped outside Columbus a while ago, I'm like, man, if you probably would have waited 6 months. I now know 4 people that live right outside Columbus that you probably know by now also. And it's
I know of a few.
So it's like, as our group gets bigger, it's like anywhere you stop on the road, there's somebody not far away. So.
Right. And there really is, it sounds a little cliche, but it's absolutely true. There really is kind of nothing like the motorcycle community, just the way we treat each other, the way we look out for each other. I have not encountered this in any other sort of pursuit, not to the same extent anyway. I remember one of the moments that really sticks in my head is when I'd first gotten the Honda Shadow. I was riding it through Massachusetts, and I was coming back after riding some scenic routes, and I was going up 495 north, which if anybody's familiar with Massachusetts knows that's a highway that can be pretty badly maintained and pretty crazy at times. And as I'm going up it on the Shadow, I didn't see it quite soon enough. I hit a pothole at 70 miles an hour, just bang, right off the back of the tire. I'm like, oh, that didn't feel good, but there's nothing I can do about it, so I'm going to keep doing. All of a sudden, as I'm sitting in the middle lane, this guy in a semi truck basically pulls up next to me and he starts yelling at me. And I'm like, oh God, did I pick him off or something? Like, what's happening here? And I look, he's like, dude, pull over. And I'm like, okay, I guess I will. What have I done? But we're going to find out. So I pull over to the side of the road, and this guy, he pulls his whole truck over. And you know how these guys are. It's, time is money. He's super busy. He's moving stuff around. But he pulls everything over to the side of the road. And I'm like, hey, what's going on? He goes, dude, look at your tail lights and look at your license plate. And I noticed that the bracket and the tail light bracket, because it was some sort of aftermarket thing that whoever had biked before me had put on it, it was like hanging off on like a light wire. Like the thing was about to fall off the bike. And I went, oh my God. And he goes like, yeah, I wanted to tell you. And I'm like, I don't have any tools, something to fix it. He goes, well, hang on, we might be able to rig something up. He looks up and down the road. He finds like an old T-shirt, tears it up, and helps me tie the whole thing back on. And I'm like, dude, thank you. How can I ever pay you? He goes, dude, I'm a biker too. This is what we do. We look out for each other. You don't have to pay me back. Just pay it forward. And then we just rode off and went our separate ways. I've never seen that guy since. But that entire incident has just really stuck in my head ever since then.
Yeah, so, cool story.
And that to me is what it's really all, the biker community itself is all about.
Yeah. Well, me and my wife were riding. It was probably a year ago. We pulled off the road just because my GoPro had died. So I'm sitting there trying to swap GoPro batteries, and a dude pulls up beside me. You all right, man? You okay? And I had seen the guy 5 minutes earlier going the other direction on the other side of the highway. And when I pulled over, this dude had turned around, flipped over on the highway, and came back to check on me. Obviously didn't have to. But yeah, this group, man, and everybody's seen Sons of Anarchy, and that puts a huge shade on our culture. But that's maybe 2% of our culture is the Dyna Bro culture and the craziness. The rest of us are just like this, man. We're out to have a good time. We got our bikes, and knowing what it's like to have a bike, I think making these long trips makes you more sensitive to other people out on their bikes, because you start thinking that guy's probably on a trip. That guy's probably trying to get somewhere. He's probably trying to get home, and I need to help that guy. So.
And the other thing about it too is motorcycles are they're great in a way. They're a great equalizer in a way that obviously like riding in a car isn't, because I mean there's all sorts of bikes out there, all sorts of things, and they come in all sorts of prices. You can pay $800 for your clapped out motorcycle and fix it up, or you can pay $40,000 for the latest, Harley CVO, whatever it is. Well, I think one of the new ones like 50 now or whatever.
Yeah, that's
whatever.
Ridiculous.
It doesn't matter, because the thing is like no matter where you came from or how much you paid for that motorcycle, when you're going out on the road and you see another guy on a bike, the same thing is separating. You've basically got one thing in common. That is that for the two of you, there are two little strips of rubber that separate you from death. And that is, I mean, it sounds dramatic, but it's very true. And that's an equalizer, I think, in a way that a lot of other things aren't. So you end up just relating, and like you said, like having sympathy for more people, because you're all kind of out there riding that same line, enduring that same risk. And you also know that wherever else that person came from, they have that same thing that's probably broken in our brains that told us this was a good idea.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So, okay, next question. Would you rather ride solo or ride with a group?
I think there's a time and place for both of them, honestly. There are times when I just want to ride solo and do my own thing and just go sort of wherever the wind takes me, or if I just have my own itinerary and idea in mind and I really, really want to do that. Then there are other times where I really want to ride with a group, and the group can also be as big or as small as you take it. I like all of it, but I think it all depends on the context, and each one has its own perks. So like obviously riding alone, being just basically like free to make your own decisions, do your own thing, is the big draw there. And you can just do it, go wherever through the day. But then when you are riding with more people, you get more of the social aspect. If it's a small group, you can form those really tight bonds. And then, riding in big groups, that can be stressful at times, trying to keep in line. But I've noticed the thing about riding, and whenever I've ridden in big groups, it's usually for like a really, really wholesome or awesome reason. Like what we do, over at FA, riding back from that, or like I did a couple of charity rides. I think it was not this past October, but the one before. I did one for my friend who was having a medical issue, and just a bunch of random people showed up to help raise money for that. My neighbor down the street who also rides and has ridden for the longest time, hung out with my parents, Bike Week is part of that crowd. One of his friends was going through treatments for cancer, and so we're like, oh, we're doing a charity ride, and we said, yeah, we'll come and join that and help out, and hundreds of people from just all over the place just showing up to help out. So it's really they both have their benefits, and yeah, if you weren't riding with big groups, well, you couldn't do all those awesome things, but then there are times when you want to ride alone. So there's not. I view them as equally good, but just also different. Depends on what you're in the mood for, too, I guess.
Yeah. So, speaking of groups, nice shirt.
Oh, well, thank you. This is my new favorite sweatshirt.
So
Yeah, this is the latest Rap Star one. I was thinking of getting the Sin Rinse Repeat one, but I basically had to look at it and go, Josh, you have enough of my money right now.
Yeah.
So.
True story. Yeah, I've got a couple of his. The original. Actually, it's not the original. It's the skull under the tree and the moon that I have. That's not even the original one though, but that's what the one everybody thinks that is the original. There was actually one before that had the goat's head and the star and stuff, and that was his original logo. And I have not seen that on a T-shirt anywhere. And I'm wondering if he'll ever bring that one back because it was kind of a catchy thing. I would never buy a pentagram with a goat's head on it, but I know there's those in our group that would. So I'm wondering if that one's ever going to come back.
Oh, I would. I would definitely buy it.
It is catchy. It's catchy and cool, but
no, but yeah, no, and I do remember that logo, and I think the other one that people think, well, the first one that I have one of the shirt that has the more known Shade Tree logo with the skull, but then also the Ken Dean wizard on the back, which is really cool with the wizard kind of riding the chopper. So.
Yep, I've got that sticker, and I never put it on anything because it's just I have a sticker folder, and I probably not embarrassed at all about this. I literally have a envelope that's probably got 100 stickers in it because I like the stickers and I'll put them somewhere, but the only ones I'll put on my bike are the ones that I've traded to somebody. Either that I traded them for it, I did a sticker swap, or they gave it to me at a rally or a meetup or something. So those stickers I got to do something with, and I buy them to support the moto vlogger. But yeah, the only ones I'll put on the bike is ones I've actually traded for.
I still have your sticker, actually. It's on the traveling bags on the Scout. That one has survived. I had a bunch of them on there, but one of the last trips I did, which we might get into later, I ended up getting a lot of mud on the side of my bike, and I think it sort of peeled a lot of them off, so I'm going to have to remove and redo some of them. But yours has survived so far.
Yeah, I put them on the windshield, and people said, yeah, those will fly right off of the windshield. And funny enough, a year later, they're all still on there, and they all look perfect. So.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's how wind works. It's the front of the label. It's going to keep, if anything, it's going to keep it there.
Yeah. So, on the same lines, what is your favorite moto meetup?
I mean, you know the answer to this.
I do.
It's yeah, definitely. Although there are other contenders that I do want to talk about, but obviously my favorite one is the Forgotten Angels camp out down in Tampa. That's just really there's nothing quite like that event. I mean, not only is it just like a great rip-roaring party, but it's for a great cause, and everybody just sort of comes together. And I've done 2 of those now. I did not this past October, I couldn't make it, but I did do the March before and then the October before that. And I've met so many great people that I wouldn't have otherwise met. Saw so many cool things, and that's actually what really draws me down. I don't mean any offense to anybody who lives down there, but riding around Tampa, in my opinion, it's not the prettiest riding area, at least in my brain when I compare it to the mountains where I live and stuff. But the people down there that we met are just fantastic. You never came with like Greg and Wayne and I to Dean's Bar, to Born Free, have you?
No. So when I went, when you were there, was last March, and when I got there, then I was working a full-time job. I was wasted. I basically took a day off, shot down there, stayed in a hotel, shot there, and I was so wiped out. I'm like, I'm just going to stay on the campground. When I came in October, that's when I said, I'm getting out. So we came a full day early. We left on like a Wednesday, got there Thursday morning early. And then we started going to bars. Sydney went to the bar with us. We went out to Raccoons. We went to Scrambled Egg on Friday and Saturday morning. And then we went out to some other places running around. So this last we got out, but yeah, that one, I had made plans to go out with Two Wheel Terror, and I couldn't find him. But that March, there was so many people there. You could literally spend an hour looking for somebody and never find them. So
That's what I was doing, just walking between various groups of people, and people kept telling me that, like, oh, you've been everywhere, you're floating around. I was like, well, I got so many people I want to talk to, and they're
oh
all over
yeah,
this god dang place, so I got to keep moving around to find them all.
yeah.
But yeah, that's actually Born Free, which is run by Dean. That's a great spot if you ever want to check that out. But that's just what I love about that. It's not just the event itself, but all the cool people around there and all like the great like lasting relationships that have really been forged there. There's nothing quite like that. So if I had to sacrifice the rest of them and pick only one, it would be that one. Yeah, I would even sacrifice Laconia for that one. Um, there is, however, another event I did attend this past August, which was a chopper camp out, essentially, which was at a campground up in Maine. So this was in Freiburg, Maine. So basically, you drive up through New Hampshire to Conway, and then you take a right and go over the border. So this is kind of up there. That was a very fun event too. That was just like if your taste is more for just complete insanity and partying, that's what that was. I still hear the sound of twin cams bouncing off rev limiters in my sleep from that event, which gives you the idea. I posted a couple pictures on Instagram. That's the one where they had the giant, like 30-foot bonfire, and there were like these crazy dudes on dirt bikes and mini bikes trying to jump. But there weren't some people or anything. They were just random, like drunk people who decided, you know what, this is a good idea. That was but that was very fun too. We met a lot. My dad ended up going to that one with me, and we met a bunch of cool people and just rode through the mountains for a day. And we had a lot of fun doing that too.
Yeah, and that always ends up happening at any rally. I mean, it even happened at Forgotten Angels. Somebody was out there at 3 o'clock in the morning revving their bike.
Oh yeah,
it's like seemed like a good idea. You know what seemed like a good idea? I want to rev this bike at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Seemed like a good idea at the time. Actually, when I woke up Saturday morning, this was at Deadbeat Retreat. I hear the sound of that sounds like a little two-stroke motor or something. I crawl out of my tent and I look up and I see this guy. He's riding through the campground on a mini bike, which is the thing that people were doing. Except this mini bike had a rather peculiar look and sound because the exhaust pipe went probably about 10 feet above this guy's head, and on the end of it he had welded a French horn. So he's just riding this thing around the campground. I'm just like, I can't decide if that's horrible or if that's the most awesome thing I've ever seen. So
if you were really drunk, it'd probably seem really awesome. If you were really hungover, it would probably not seem really awesome. So
I mean, I might have been like in some sort of combined state there, hence the split feelings. But it was pretty cool. So yeah, special shout out to Deadbeat Retreat up in Freiburg, Maine. And if choppers are your thing, that's definitely, and you're in that area, that's the thing they do every August, I think. But yes, the champion winner of that round is Forgotten Angels.
All right. So follow-up question to that: what is your favorite single moto meetup? Just an impromptu thing that it doesn't happen every year, not periodic, and people just go, "We're gonna have a meetup," and you had a meetup and it was great.
I'm trying to think of just one-offs that I might have done that probably won't be repeated. I did mention those charity rides that I did back in October of last year, not last year, the year before, excuse me. And there was one that we had done for a very good family friend of mine. She and her boyfriend both have for a long time. And so we met. He's actually in a veterans MC. Unfortunately, I cannot recall the name of it at the moment, but it's one of the ones that's in this area. It's like they go through the American Legion posts and all that. And we actually did a really cool share. It was to raise money for her because she had some medical issues around that time. But we just met a bunch of random people from that MC, and we rode through South Central Mass. In fact, the video that you have for the thumbnail, not the video, the thumbnail that you have for this video, excuse me, that is where that is from. Actually, that's on that ride, and that's actually the first time I ever went out and ran blocker for a group of bikers. So that's why my mom actually took that picture of me as she went by. But I was basically stopped at an intersection. I think we were on 140. Got the signs right above my head if you look at the thumbnail. But that was a really cool event. And again, it just reinforced that thing that I like about the motorcycle community so much. It's just all these random people being like, you know what? One of our own is in need, so we're just all going to step out and help. And we had a great time. We stopped at all the American Legion posts, had a single beer and something to eat at each one, and stopped eventually. But that was really fun. I don't know of any other one-off stuff that will never be repeated. I don't know if we'll ever find that group that we had at Deadbeat Retreat again, that my dad and I met. That was just a bunch of random people we had never met before, but we happened to be camped out in the same area. because similar to FA, it was there's no campsites or anything. You just get there when you can and throw a tent wherever there's space. And this was like there were people from New Jersey, there were people from other parts of Mass, and then we all just sort of rode together through the White Mountains. We went, we didn't do the Kangamangas, which is a famous road there, but we did 302, which is the road to the north of it. We rode by Mount Washington and saw that. We went up to a couple of the notches. We went up to one of the notches in Maine there. That's like in the main part of the White Mountain National Forest, which is really, really pretty. So that was a super fun sort of one-off thing that happened.
So speaking of campouts, Justin wants to know: will you be singing another Reba McEntire song at the March campout?
Probably not Reba McEntire. I am in talks right now with Shaker, with our guy Dwight there, because I have a scheme that involves Rolling Stones music and him playing saxophone while we sing Rolling Stones. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. But probably not Reba McEntire again. Although that was big fun.
Yeah, we need more live music at the campout. We had, you missed it this last time, but we got up into the Yingling Shack, and there were 3 guitars in there, and we started singing in the Yingling Shack. On your couch. On your couch. They took your couch.
That's bastards. My couch?
Bastards. Yeah, every time I walked in, you were on either you and, what was his name? Designated. Were on the couch every time I walked in.
Okay, yeah, this was from back in March. Oh, yeah. You know what? And there was. I was sitting down on that couch a lot towards the end of that night, and there is actually a specific reason. I grabbed the wrong pair of Merrill boots. I have 2 pairs of Merrill hiking boots, and I grabbed the wrong ones. The soles on those were worn out, so my feet were freaking killing me like that whole night. So that's why I was sitting down on that couch so much. Also, that's where the beer was.
That's where the beer was. It ain't called the Yingling Shack for nothing.
No, I remember the October one I went to. We actually, whoever had been, there working the kegs had long left, and this was like at 1 a.m. So me and a couple other guys, we just sort of hopped over there and started working them ourselves because we weren't done.
So, what is the stupidest thing you've ever done on a motorcycle?
Stupidest thing I've ever done on a motorcycle. Well, at least that I'm willing to admit to and talk to, and not get in trouble for. And this isn't a single thing, but this is something that I had been doing in years past that I'm trying to. It's a bad habit that I'm trying to break, and that is getting frustrated behind a line of cars when they're not going as fast as I want to be going, and then saying to hell with it and going over the double yellow line and accelerating past them. This is an ongoing problem of mine. I know I shouldn't do it, and I'm trying to stop. My dad is actually a very bad influence in this regard. And when we ride together, we have done this a few times on Route 16. There are a couple of times where I did it solo, and there was traffic coming the other way that I couldn't see, so I had to pull over and breathe and go, Alex, what the hell are you doing right now? So that is one of the dumber things I have done on a motorcycle. Couple of close calls, but nothing else that I would say is too deliberately dumb. And then just bad weather calls. Sometimes I was like, oh yeah, that storm will be gone by the time I roll through, and then it's not. No, we end up with a little adventure there.
So on that same note, what is the scariest moment you've ever had on a bike?
So the scariest moment I've ever had on a bike was. I'm trying to think if I had the Shadow at this time. I think I did. Yeah, I would have had to because the Shadow, unlike my Scout, does not have anti-lock brakes. So this was a time where, this was actually in 2020, if I'm not mistaken, during the height of the pandemic. And Bike Week that year, it hadn't been canceled, but what happened was they had moved Laconia Bike Week to August so that they could still have it. The reason they had done all this was so that this year could still be the 100th anniversary because they had people who made hotel reservations years in advance for that. But why that's important to mention is because we had a couple of people who were up riding around, but it was a lot hotter than it normally would have been. And we decided that we were going to go for a ride all the way up to Errol, New Hampshire, and then come back. So I was with a group of people, and then we had my cousin who I mentioned before and her boyfriend, the ones who helped get me back into riding. We were with them, but at one point we had to split off from the main group because they were supposed to go with my cousin's grandparents on a on a pontoon boat ride on Lake Winnipesaukee because my uncle works at one of the marinas there. So what happened was we were up in Errol, New Hampshire, and I thought we were going to stop for lunch. What I didn't realize is that the other part of the group was going to go get lunch, and then we had to go all the way back to Guilford. Yeah, that part's Guilford. To Guilford, New Hampshire, which is a couple hours back to the south. And I, if you don't know, occasionally have blood sugar issues, so I sort of need to be eating regularly, so this is not something I should do. So I hadn't been eating, it was super hot, and we were riding all the way back south. So by the time we get back to the Guilford area, my brain is mush at this point. I don't even know what's going on. All I know is that I'm hot, I'm angry, and I'm hungry. And we were riding, my cousin and her boyfriend on his bike, my dad on his bike, and then me on the Shadow. And what happened was my dad, because I was going to go on the boat with my cousins, so my dad split off, and they were like, "Okay, Alex, you lead us back to the marina." Like I said, my brain is in space at this point, so I'm leading back to the marina, and I'm just not paying any attention to what's going on in front of me, which is not a good idea when you're going through Tilton because it goes down to one lane, and then people stop to take a left into the Wendy's, which is what happened. So I slam on my brakes as hard as I can, like not even thinking, and both tires lock up. So now I'm doing the double skid. I end up going onto the double yellow line, and I skid right down the double yellow line between the car that had stopped and a white van that was coming the other way. I probably had this much clearance on each side. I thought that was it. I thought I was going to get pasted right there. Somehow, and I heard one of the guys in one of the other cars go, "Whoa!" as I was going by. And I somehow skidded by both of them, ended up going around them, didn't fall, didn't crash, didn't smack into anything. Rode down the road probably another 100 yards and turned off into a random road on the right and said, "I got to stop for a minute." But that was the closest probably I've ever come to being in a really, really bad wreck. And yeah, that was pretty terrifying. So.
Yet.
Yeah. Yet. Yeah, as of right now. That wasn't the only time that I'd done the double lockup on the Shadow, but that was the time that I'd done it and come close to actually wrecking.
Aaron has a request. He wants to know if you'll do Careless Whisper at the next camp out.
I'm not doing Careless Whisper. There are perhaps certain people who can make certain requests, but I don't know about that one. I do take requests, but I'm not doing Wham.
So to change the question, how many beers would it take for you to do Careless Whisper?
You know what the actual problem is? I don't know Careless Whisper. Like, I don't actually know the lyrics of that song. I don't know how most of it goes. All I know is it's a Wham song, and I'm just not really super into that. So
once you get enough beers in you, it'll come to you. It'll come naturally.
I mean, the answer's probably something like a dozen, but we would have to see. And, I mean, beers is one thing. Also, whiskey could very much make the determination there.
Then I guess we'll work on it.
Yeah.
All right.
So maybe I'll listen to it and see if I actually like it.
Yeah. There's been a lot of songs that I would never have listened to, and all of a sudden one day I'm singing to them, and it's like, I like this song. It's not too bad. Mm-hmm. So what has been your most favorite part of writing?
You know, so I mean, I've mentioned the whole community thing aspect, and I don't want to hammer that particular stake into the ground anymore. I will say that, well, because there's also another aspect I want to talk about, and this is more when I'm riding alone. But what's interesting about riding a motorcycle to me, and one of the things about that experience that really just hooks me, is, you know, throughout a lot of my life, especially before I rode, I'm not going to say doubly do right or anything like that, but it was always like, oh, this isn't logical. I should do this because this makes the most sense. I was always trying to be, like, as sensible as possible. If we're being honest with ourselves, there's not really a ton that's sensible about riding a motorcycle when you really get down to it. But what I like is that, you know, throughout most of my life, I kind of live almost like chained to logic. Like, I'm always like, nah, this is how this should be. This is the best idea in this situation. When I actually get on a motorcycle, I don't care about that anymore, and it's almost like I'm free from logic for just an hour or however long the ride is. But I'm free from logic, and I'm also free from fear to a certain extent. Like, I know what I'm doing is dangerous, and I am trying to take the proper precautions and stay alert. But I'm not really afraid. I just, as I'm riding, I sort of know that it's like, oh yeah, no, this could be it, but I'm okay with that as I'm doing it. And so it's just it gives me a certain freedom from fear and a certain freedom from always trying to do the most sensible thing, and it's not something I really get anywhere else. So it's just, yeah, it's really just that freedom and that sort of liberation aspect for that, however long the ride is. It could be 10 minutes. If it's a 10-minute ride to the gas station, for those 10 minutes, I feel like I'm finally just released from all of that.
Okay. Good answer. So, flip side of that, what is the most frustrating part of riding for you?
The most frustrating part of riding for me personally is the fact that when you live up here, we do in fact have a riding season. I don't have access. Well, actually, in Massachusetts there hasn't been much snow, but if I was up in Guilford, you could look out the window and see there's a foot of snow on everything. It is extremely frustrating to me that we have a limited ride. I know there's people who are like, oh, you can ride, you can still ride, and I'm like, yeah, you could try it. It really, I don't think. I hate to say it, but it really wouldn't be worth it with all the snow and the ice and the salt that's on the roads that just eats everything right down to the frame. You should see the underside of the trucks from up here. They're always a horror show. And it's from, and there's just always crud in the road, and it's cold. It's there. You really don't want to be riding around this time of year. So that's one of the more frustrating things. And what actually does frustrate me about that is I still feel like I'm in like a learning phase. I'm still trying to build my skills as a rider. And I mean, I make more progress every year, but I always feel like I go backwards a little bit during this time because I basically just have to spend months not being able to ride. And I don't. If you ever run into Shep again, I think because he was riding with us when we were going out to breakfast, the last March camp out I was at, and I was sort of more towards the front of the pack. And Shep and the other people who were in the pack will tell you I was kind of not wobbling, but I was a little bit like not keeping to my line very well. I was, going back and forth a little bit. I was drifting a lot, and and was noticing, and I was having to consciously do it. But part of what it is, I was just out of practice because I hadn't ridden in months and months and months, and so that's just something you gotta go through every year. So that's probably the most frustrating aspect of it.
Yeah, I
Also,
lived in.
it's also sorry. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. This is your show. I'm just here to to look
Yeah.
good.
There is a part of it too that can sometimes it forces me to make a certain choice that I didn't have to before, because while I do ride and I do love riding, I still very much love to hunt and fish. And the problem is that it very often can conflict with these things. The reason that I was not at the last October camp out was because that Saturday was literally our opening day muzzleloader season. It was our deer opener. Was that day? So I just couldn't do it because I have not missed that since in more over 10 years. And then also in the summer it can be frustrating because I'll be looking at my truck where I have my kayak and all my fishing gear and go, oh, I can go fishing today, but I really want to also ride. So you can't. I mean, if you get a good size ADV and some breakdown fishing gear and you go to a remote trout pond, maybe you can do both. I've wanted to explore that, but as of right now, I can't really do both at the same time, and that can be sort of frustrating.
Well, there is some fishing trips for grabs at the Forgotten Angels raffle.
Yes, yes, and then but that's the thing is you have to put in for the raffle, and then only a certain number of people. If you guys actually ever came up this way sometime, I could show you all the smallmouth and trout fishing I'm talking about, and I'm not in fact just full of crap. It does exist, but
Oh no, we've
but
seen the pictures. Anybody that's been on your
yeah,
Instagram has seen the pictures. So
yeah. So
yeah, I think that's one of the
so
things I
yeah,
touted for the video was if you want trout for breakfast, come visit Mad
yeah,
Yankee. So
yeah. I tried this morning, but all I caught was perch, and I had to throw them all back. So
right on. I wanted to use for the thumbnail. I wanted to use the picture of you with the coyote headdress. Is that a coyote or is it
oh,
a?
nope, that is not a coyote.
What is it?
That is a black bear.
Oh well, hell.
That is the last black bear I shot. As a matter of fact,
Yeah.
I don't have that with me, but I actually, because it's down here, I have the skull and the rug from my first bear before that actually right behind me. So I don't
Show
know
'em.
if you can see that. See that guy right back there? But that is actually my bear rug, and then the skull. Where is that skull? Give me just a minute. Sorry, I keep shaking the darn table here. It's a little old desk. But this is actually the skull from my first bear. I got both parts of that. So that isn't actually a headdress. I was just thinking of turning it into one, but right now it's just the hide in the upper part of the head there. But when I took that selfie, I literally just had a moment like, hey, I actually could maybe turn this into a headdress. I don't really know how, but I'm sure there's a way.
Oh, you had me fooled. I thought you were going, full Swiss Family Robinson.
I mean, there was an idea of that. I know for some reason Josh has taken to calling me the Berserker during the last couple of live streams. I'm not sure where that came from, but it is weirdly appropriate because I do have that. My uncle does, in fact, have a Scottish claymore that I'm apparently allowed to borrow, so we could make that a thing. I don't know.
Awesome. We've got a couple of questions from the crowd.
All right.
Back it up one. So, Aaron, that's my question, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it. Are you planning on getting another bike, and what is it?
I have a couple of ideas for additional bikes. My current plan with the Scout is to ride it around until it's fully paid off and then make a determination. At some point, I think I will move to a bigger, more touring-oriented bike. There's essentially 3 that are in the main running for that. One would be the Indian Super Chief, so like the sort of newer Chief line that they came out with that's not quite as bulky. I've ridden, my dad actually has a 2016 Chief Vintage, which I have ridden around. It's a little big and wallowy for my taste, but it is cool. But I wanted to try one of those other ones, and the other 2 that would be in that running would be either a Harley Davidson Softail Heritage or a Road King Special. If you've ever heard me talk about Road Kings, you know they're some of my favorite bikes ever made. So those would definitely be on the short list for like moving up or graduating from the Scout if I decide to go that route. But I don't know. I really do like that Scout. The other sort of additional bike I might get to just have both in conjunction, I've been thinking about getting a dual sport actually. And I think what I really would have my eyes on would be like a KLR 650 because I want to dual sport something that I can ride around on the trails. I'm not looking to go off and thrash because I'm not quite there. But I want something that I can actually ride to the trails and then just ride around and then take off road a little bit, but that I could also use as like sort of a touring oriented bike. I read a piece on Revzilla a while back, and they were mentioning, I think it was Lemmy might have wrote it, but he was mentioning the idea of having a cheap beater bike to basically ride around during the winter. That way, if the salt and the road grime and everything eats it, you don't really care. And I remember looking at it going, if I got like a cheap KLR 650, and then I did want to ride out during March back to FA when the weather was crappy and there was salt all over the roads. Well, I don't care if that thing gets trashed, but I'm a little bit too in love with how the Scout looks to do that to it. But I also just think they're cool bikes. There's other like sorts of dual sports that I would consider, but I'm thinking of something that would have like cargo on it. And obviously a KLR 650 as a touring bike is weird. I think if you talk to Smokey the Van, he'll tell you that. I mean, you interviewed him. He probably mentioned that riding those things on the highway is probably a bit of a chore after a while because they're just not really made to go that speed for long.
Yeah, they top out pretty quick. I've seen a few people say those top out pretty quick.
Yeah.
And you don't have a lot of wind resistance. You don't have a lot of wind protection. So you're in the winter. Yeah, good luck.
Well, you've seen what I got on the Scout. It's basically just that windshield, and that's it. Everything else is out in the air, so I'm kind of used to that. But yeah, no, it's not quite got the power. I know that the idea of a KLR 650 with more power does basically exist. It's essentially what the Yamaha T7 is. But that bike's a little new. I don't want to be buying another new bike right now. Plus, if I'm just being honest, I think that bike is cool, but I really don't like the way it looks. If I'm being perfectly honest, I can't get over the way that headlight setup is. It's like it looks like it should be on Battlestar Galactica or something, maybe not necessarily on a motorcycle.
So Billy has a question for both of us. Will we be at the next Weirdo Campout? I'm going to be there.
Yep. I'm planning on it. Right now, my plan is to I did all the other major purchase I made last spring. Was I finally got a pickup truck. I have a Toyota Tacoma now. So my plan at the moment actually is like if the weather really doesn't allow riding out of New England at that time, then I will actually just put the bike in the back of the truck and drive the truck down. That would be my current plan. I've never actually done that. I've never loaded a bike into a truck before. I've never done that sort of thing. So that'll be an adventure. But that's definitely an option. But I am planning on being there.
So Randall's asking about your bike. Let me see if I can find your bike real quick on Instagram here.
Yeah. I know the looks of the Scout it's definitely like a love it or hate it thing. A lot of people really like it. I'm pretty sure Josh described it, not my just Scouts in general, not necessarily mine Scout, but if I remember the term he used, it was a smashed bag of assholes, if I'm not mistaken. So it's definitely not everybody's cup of tea. But
All right, so this is. You can still see some stickers on the side of it, so it's there.
yep.
And back to Riverside. All right, so Diana Pillion Style wants to know what makes you the.
You keep dropping out on me, but was that question what makes me the Mad Yankee?
Yep.
All right. Well, it's actually quite simple. I just thought the name sounded kind of cool. I am, in fact, from the north, and so that would be a lot of conventional standards make me a Yankee. I had a couple people at the camp out once ask me if that meant I was a New York Yankees fan, and I am too polite to stab anybody, but please do not tempt me. I have being from Boston, I actually still got one of the old Red Sox that's on the walls there. But you know, Yankee is just obviously it's a term. It's a general term for Northerners that obviously is used in the South. It's also overseas a lot, particularly like from England. It's just a generic term for an American. And I always, you know, it's funny because like other than the whole New York Yankees thing, I am from New England and I do identify with that a lot. And Yankee was historically a term that was used to describe New Englanders a lot. Obviously, you know, you have the whole Mark Twain thing, which was like a Connecticut Yankee in the court of King Arthur. You know, there's like Yankee Magazine, which is like a New England. So it's just a term that is used to that. And then the Mad thing is just like it's like Mad Hatter. It's just like, you know, crazy. And yeah, most people I met tell me I'm not really all there, and I'm not really going to argue with them. So yep, like the Mad Hatter, but a Yankee, I guess.
Gma Raj just popped in. You're late to the party. You missed everything, hey. Gma. Gosh, how dare you?
Hey Gma.
She's becoming everybody's friend also. She's closing circles. My question for Gma, when are you going to come to one of our campouts? When are you going to make it official? Make us a thing. Put a ring on it.
Don't make me come and find you. I will do it. I will drag you there.
I think she just puts out her address and says, come eat. I think that was her offer to everybody. Come to my house and I'll feed you. Seriously.
She's in the Pacific Northwest, right?
Yeah, she's up in the PNW.
Yeah.
Okay, so sort of an attached question, but what bike would you like to get on and ride just one time? You don't have to pay for it. Just one time.
There's a couple that are on that list, but you know, one of the ones that's actually really had my interest for a long time that I'd want to ride just once would be a Yamaha VMAX. Either I kind of have a thing for those old like 80s and 90s ones, but I have ridden with not on the bike, but one of the last times I was up on a long ride, I was with somebody who was on a 2009 VMAX, so the second generation that they briefly made. Those bikes are just they are too cool for school. I've always just loved the general aesthetic they put out. Like they're just the dumbest thing on the planet. Like let's take this frame that really probably can't take this much power and just jam as much horsepower as we can into it, regardless of whether or not it's actually a good idea. So that's probably the number one. Another one that's in a similar vein actually is that I would very much, if I actually ever could own a vintage Honda, because I don't think I've mentioned this a whole lot, but I actually love Honda motorcycles. That's like one of my, I probably talked about it a bit. But I would very much like to have or ride an original V65 Sabre at some point. I think actually one of my uncles used to drag race those, and there was a framed picture of him on the wall in like a tracksuit, like hunched over in the attack position. He must have been at the New England Dragway, which is up in Epping. He's just ripping up on this thing, and so that's those bikes have kind of always held my interest. And then the last one on that list would probably be Rocket 3, just because.
Yep.
But similar sort of vein, just all the power. I don't think I'd ever want to own a Rocket 3 just because of how gargantuan they are and how much bigness there is involved there. But one of these days I would like to ride one just to see what all the fuss was about.
I do know somebody that has 2 of those motorcycles. So,
oh well,
and he always says if you can ride anything he's got, so we just need to hit him up for the next camp out and have him get him up there. I mean, if they're running.
Well, this is very true. So,
Gma says
I've always
she's
just liked the idea of a muscle bike.
Gma says she's in Tacoma, so I think we should probably schedule one of our meetups in Tacoma.
Well, the problem that I have with the Pacific Northwest, and I was talking about this with Circus Bear a while back, is remember the thing I mentioned about having the decision between like motorcycle riding and fishing? Well, it's very much a thing there because I've heard so much about the salmon fishing up there, and I've always wanted to do it. If I'm taking my bike, I really don't think I can strap my 9-foot steelhead ride to it. So I don't know. We'll figure out a way.
We can always rent when we get there. Yeah, I'm thinking if I was to ride that far, I would either need an entire week off just to drive there, because it's not the distance it would get you, it's all the things you have to drive through that you're like, I need a picture here, I need a picture there.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually I mentioned this to Circus Bear one time, but actually one of my ideas for a dream trip is because I am a kid born in the early '90s. That means I grew up in computer labs playing the Oregon Trail, much like a lot of us did. And I've actually always wanted to recreate that entire thing on a motorcycle. So, because those are all actual landmarks that were in that game. So I'd love to stop by all the landmarks, but also just go that route, up through the mountains, and get to Oregon. Hopefully I don't die of dysentery. So.
Yeah, I definitely want to go up there, but it's just because I know me, I would have to fly there and rent something. Because, just like on Shade Tree's video, they planned on getting back in 5 days, and it took them 2 weeks because there's just, once you start riding those roads, it's like, oh, well, let's go through Yellowstone. Oh, well, let's go through here. Well, let's go up to Oregon. Well, now we got to see the Grand Canyon. Well, now we got to go through Las Vegas. Well, and it just turns into and you can't stop. It's a trip of a lifetime. I mean.
No, it really is. You'd need 2 weeks to do it. I've always thought, if I ever had a job that I got laid off from and I had, a severance package or something, that's probably what would be immediately happening. It's all right, I'll figure out what I'm doing for work when I get back. But right now, I'm going on this trip. So.
I did that, but I went to Ohio. I went all the way down to Baton Rouge, went over to Texas, went up to Ohio, seen a bunch of people in Ohio, went through Kentucky, and then came home. And it was... You don't get those chances. I mean, and when you get the opportunity to do them, it's like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go as far south as I can. I'm going to ride as far north as I can.
Yep.
So, and it was a ball. I would definitely recommend to anybody to do it.
Yeah, around here you can only ride north so far until you need a passport. But but that's something. I've actually done.
And you've rode as south as far as you could go almost. So.
Pretty much. I mean, I haven't ridden to the end of Florida. Actually, my aunt lives in Key West, so that would be something that's fun. Just ride all the way down and then go hang out in Key West for a little while. So.
Definitely another trip of a lifetime. Just to say you did it. I mean,
it's just so many. And we only got so much time. So.
On that same note, if you had all the time in the world and you could just disappear on a bike today and not have any timetable to be back, where would you go?
Well, I think we kind of hit on this one, but yeah, I would ride all the way to the Pacific and back. I'd probably go more through the north, go through the Dakotas on the way there, and then, well, actually, now that I think of it too, the other thing I would really want to do is go to Alaska. That would be wicked cool. And again, I'd want to also ride, but also fish when I got out there. So maybe I'd find a guide service and just run some gear. But I definitely want to do that. I think, Pacific Northwest, and then to Alaska, and going through the Rocky Mountains and that whole scene. And then if I had all the time in the world, then maybe cut farther south on the way back, and then kind of do what some other folks did last spring, go up, but then get back to the Northeast through, you say, Tennessee, and then going into Tail of the Dragon and that sort of thing. So. I've been to Tennessee many, many times, but I haven't ridden my bike there yet, and that's actually bothering me, to be honest. I need to do that.
There's always chances. I mean,
Yep.
you're obviously younger than me, and there's a lot of things I didn't get to see till I was in my 50s. So
Yep.
time is not a measuring stick, man. It's
Yeah.
just a
And well, there's the other thing that gets me, and not to get kind of dark for a minute, but it's really true. It's like, I am whatever age. I don't know how much time I have left. I don't. I could die tomorrow. I could die in my sleep tonight. I have no idea. So, and that's the thing is, like, if you do have the chance, like, go and do it. Go and do this stuff while you got the chance, because you never know when you won't anymore.
yeah. We all have an expiration date, but it's not stamped on our foot. So
Nope. Exactly.
you have no clue.
Nope. Zero idea.
So, have you inspired anyone to ride or wrench on their own bikes?
I certainly haven't inspired anybody to wrench, but I may have inspired a few people to ride. So what's interesting too is, like I said, I got back into riding in 2017. Well, I mentioned that my parents had kind of fallen out of riding around, in the early 2000s. When I got back into it, it's actually when they got back into it. So when I was doing all that, my dad finally looked around and said basically what I was saying, like, I don't know how much time I have left. Why don't I just go out and, as Josh says, buy the motorcycle, because life is short. So he went out and he got that Indian Chief, and now ever since then, he and he's like my main riding partner. Actually, we go freaking everywhere. So I kind of, and my mom was often hopping on the back of the Chief too and going with. So we've actually taken like family motorcycle trips all over the place. We did, some to Maine, which was really fun. We went up to Burlington, Vermont, one time, which is actually huge fun. If you're ever in the Northeast, Vermont, when you're riding around, you cannot go wrong riding anywhere through Vermont. The whole state really just is beautiful. And so that I kind of, help bring them back into it. And then as far as new people, well, we're not sure yet, but this winter, my younger cousin, has been making a lot of noise about getting a motorcycle. I don't know if he'll get one, but he is pretty much dedicated, at least on taking MSF, which is what I told him. I said, look, if you think you're into it but you're not sure, well, at least sign up for the class. You do so, you'll learn all the basics, but you'll also do some riding, and then that will also tell you if this is really something you like to do. Because if you're riding around the bike on MSF and you're like, oh my god, I absolutely hate this and I never want to do it again, well, now you'll know. Or you'll decide, hey, maybe I do like this. So I might, but that remains to be seen whether or not he'll actually do it. But there's I guess some seeds being planted there. So, but he is making a lot of noise about taking that and then buying a Dyna for some reason. I'm trying to talk him more towards a Sportster, but we'll see what happens.
Randy says, always have fun. You'll be dead longer than you'll be alive.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very true. That's the other thing is we're not around for very long. When you get into it.
Oh, yeah. If you could tell a rider one thing you had to learn the hard way, a new rider, what would it be?
One thing I had to learn the hard way. I don't know if this really counts as learning something the hard way. But one thing I always try to emphasize is whenever I'm doing all this, and this is true for the riding, but also like the fishing and the hunting, is if I'm going out and doing something crazy, I mean, look at me. I am not some sort of super person. I am not some kind of mega awesome action hero person. I am some goober who happens to just really like doing this, and what I just like doing is just getting out there and doing it, and that's really the main thing. I guess one thing that I did sort of have to learn the hard way is that when it comes to this, and this is true for a lot of things, but it's definitely true of riding, you do have to not only do you have to set your own boundaries, but you also kind of have to be the one to enforce them. So when you start riding with a lot of people, some people are going to try to, it is just the unfortunate truth that some people are going to try to maybe pressure you to make decisions you wouldn't otherwise make. Oh, you don't need to wear that gear. You don't need to wear that helmet. Oh, you can, have 5 shots of whiskey and then leave this bar. And if, you want to stay within your own, not only do you have to use your own judgment as to what's safe, but then you have to be the one to say, no, look, I'm good. This is what I'm going to do. That's kind of something that I've had to learn the hard way, is because everybody has their own idea of what the appropriate amount of gear is, or what's safe, or what's what's speeding and what's reckless riding, because we all have our own distinctions of what the difference between those two things are. But you are going to have to be the one to set your own boundaries. And then just, yeah, don't be, and when you're in those situations, don't be afraid to advocate for yourself or just do your own thing. If you're riding with some other people and you think they're going too fast, well, just, slow down. And if you get a chance to talk to them, let them know and say, hey, I appreciate you guys can do your thing, but I'm gonna go the speed that I'm comfortable with. And what you'll actually find is 9 times out of 10, the people you're with will be like, yeah, that's cool, and they'll actually encourage you to do that. Like, say, yeah, ride your own ride. Don't worry about what us dumbasses are doing. We don't do anything you're not comfortable with. But don't do anything you're not comfortable with, but you are going to have to be the person who sets those boundaries and enforces them. Not other people aren't going to do it for you because they're not the same boundaries as yours.
Yeah, that's why I like smaller groups, because I think stupidity is exponential. Yeah. The more people you put together, all of a sudden it becomes a competition and they want to outdo each other. So
it's multiplicative, not additive, and that's the issue. So and this can sometimes help. Like if you have a couple of smart people, sometimes you can multiply the smartness. But somebody who's a half-wit and a half-wit do not equal a full-wit. It's a half-wit times a half-wit, so it equals a quarter-wit. I should know because I am a half-wit. When I ride with other half-wits, we do quarter-witted things.
So Gma says she's got a lot of answers to this question. So Gma, you're on the schedule. If you're not, let me know. Yeah. I'll get you on there, and I'll get you in here too, because I intend to interview everybody in the motorcycle community if it takes me another 20 years. I'm going to get everybody I can, because every one of these interviews, people have different answers to just about every question, and I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
So, okay. We've already covered what is your next bike. If you could tell a new rider one thing that you had to... No, I already did that one too.
You just asked me that.
Dang it. So what is one thing people don't know about you?
One thing that people don't know about me?
Yep.
I'm pretty open about those things, so I don't know if... I don't know if there's a lot to tell that they wouldn't know. I'm sort of drawing a blank here. I did go to college. if anybody wants to know about that, but that's not terribly exciting. There's not other than that, just like my work life, I just don't talk about it much because it's supremely boring. If anyone wants to know, I'm an insurance specialist for a commercial leasing and fleet management company, which is about as exciting as it sounds. So, there's not really a lot going there. One thing that might actually surprise some people is despite like riding and doing stuff with cars, I actually didn't even get a driver's license until I think I was about 24, 25, something like that. Didn't have the money for a car, and then just didn't have the wherewithal to go get the license. And when I finally did in my mid-20s, my life changed very drastically. So.
Well, here's your chance to ask me some questions.
Let's see. When do you want to meet up and go riding around Tennessee? Because I've been wanting to do that for a while.
Any weekend, man. Come on down. I mean, shit. Yeah. If you come down and ride around, I'll help you. You can help me with the show. I mean, it's
sure.
That would be awesome. Yeah. Anytime. Come on down. I got a spare bedroom.
All right, I'm not nearly as tech savvy as I used to be, but I'm sure that there's a random like Friday or Monday I get off that I don't schedule and I could probably just pop down for.
Yeah, shoot on down, man. I literally have every weekend open, so not a problem.
Whenever like Juneteenth or Father's Day is, or whenever the heck that is, because I always schedule my own stuff around the other campouts. But yeah, I could definitely do that. The other question is. No, I don't know if you have any interest in doing this, but when are you coming up for the 100th anniversary of Laconia? Do you have any interest in that at all?
Interest? Oh, yes. So I just had a job change, so now my vacation is in limbo. But I mean, last year when they were talking about going to Laconia, or actually it wasn't that long ago, really. I was thinking about going, but I had so much other stuff going on. So, but yes, Laconia eventually wants to be one of my trips. I want to start making these trips that like you said, I always said before, I don't have time to do that. Well, I'm too old for that. Well, that's a young man's game. That's a partier's game. That's a real biker's game. And now I'm like, I need to start going to this stuff. Because just like, Doodle went in one of her videos and went to Sturgis. And then she went to Daytona. And it's like, everybody fits in there. And I'm like, what's holding me back? And you finally have to realize nothing. Nothing's holding me back. The only thing holding me back is me. And I've got to get over that.
This is true about, I think, a lot of meetups, but I think it's definitely true of Laconia. It's different things for different people. But because the drive coming up to Laconia, there's the whole going to Weir's Boulevard and then seeing all the bikes and, taking your picture with the sign and buying your overpriced t-shirt and all that. And I do that every year because it's part of the thing. But the real draw of Bike Week to me isn't that. What it actually is it's an excuse for, everybody to just come up, meet, hang out in somebody's backyard, sit around the fire. And then during the day, you just go riding around New England. And there's such great riding around there, especially once you get into the White Mountains or when you go over the border into Vermont or you go around all these cool places. It's really just an excuse to do all that. So, that's always been the draw of it for me. And I'm not the only one up here. Captain Granite lives probably about 10 minutes away from me, actually, if you ever want to meet him. And
like I keep saying, every time I learn where somebody is, there's somebody else there. If I go somewhere, somebody else is there. And the only exception to that used to be, so Jack Daniels liked to do that trip, and I want to try to make it a permanent thing for my birthday every year to go to Jack Daniels on Labor Day. And now, and now Whiskey Chaser lives there. So now, when I go there, Whiskey Chaser is there. So
yes. And I am, in fact, on a mission to find him. He did come up and hang out with us during Bike Week last year. We rode around together. I tried to take him to all the spots, at least that were in that one area where we were. But, when I heard he moved to Tennessee, I actually do have some extended family outside of Nashville in a couple of the suburbs there. So I'm not unfamiliar with the area.
I love it when the world gets small.
Yeah.
Small, it absolutely is. So everybody's asking about where I live. Yes. I live in Mississippi, but it's literally on the border of Tennessee. I can throw a rock and hit Memphis. So I'm actually in North Mississippi. Zandbikers got that right. But I work in, up until not too long ago, I worked in Memphis. So I'm only a mile from the Tennessee border. If that puts anything into question. So anybody wants to come visit the best city in Mississippi, that's where I'm at. If you want to come visit Memphis, come visit me instead. You don't want to stay in Memphis. Visit Memphis. Stay on this side of the border.
No.
Do not stay in Memphis.
No, I don't. I'm not looking to stay in Memphis, but yeah, some of the area around it. The other thing that we got going on up here too is we've been working on the past couple of years getting this place fixed up, but my family's old house in Maine is getting repaired, and we're actually making some serious progress on that. So this summer, that should actually be good to have some people over. We got 8-10 beds or space for that, so I'm trying to see if I can get everybody up there, because if you've seen some of the main pictures on Instagram, that's a really cool place.
I definitely want to go. I'm not that far from retirement either. In a couple more years, 3 more years probably, I'll retire, and then I'll visit everybody. So don't dare me. I'm going to visit everybody. So
I'll dare you. I'll dare you until you actually do it.
All right, guys, we are at the end. I've really enjoyed this. I hope you've enjoyed it too. So let's get some exit music on. We can dance our way out of here.
Big fun.
So, all right, everybody. Well, this has been another very awesome episode of Rainy Nights. So if you've liked it, like, subscribe, comment, hit that bell, and come back and see more what we got to offer. All right, everybody. So, do you want to drop your Instagrams before we head out?
Yep, it's just it's the Mad Yankee 92. That's all there is to it. Capital T, if we're being particular. But,
so you're gonna start working on a YouTube?
Possibly. I would need to get some recording equipment going, but I do have some ideas for a YouTube channel. It'll basically just be the same as my Instagram page. Like, they're hunting, fishing, riding. Other than that, there is no theme. Just whatever the heck we're doing.
Yeah, fishing and riding. I mean, that's fishing and hunting. I think is huge. I mean, everybody wants to get into it. So.
Oh yeah. So.
Do it, man. All right, guys. Thanks for coming by. Go ahead and drop a like. Don't forget. Yeah, I'm not making any money off this, but I do like to see those likes. So, all right, you want to hang out for a second there, man? And I'll talk to you after we leave, and we're out.
Sure.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.